Welcome to Gatorade, an opinion route show to help market research professionals learn and grow. In this podcast, we share stories, insights, and philosophies that unlock enterprise value for the modern market research company. Here's our host, CEO and founder, Terence McCarron.
All right, so we're jumping in now to talk about some kind of crazy news. I think it's fair to say unprecedented. Can't think of anything like this in the industry's history and in the time I've been a part of it. But some tough news about a small B2B sample company primarily been indicted. They seem to, at least the accusation is, that they were guilty of survey fraud, but it was an inside job, right? So it's not that they were victimized themselves, but they actually had developed a fraud scheme. So, we're here with Rich Ratcliff, the Chief Trust Officer from Opinion Route, and Danielle Chinitz, who's our SVP of Client Experience. And what we want to do is just answer, it's like an FAQ, right? Answer common questions we've been hearing the last few days from our clients and from people that are just out there not working with us, but they're scared. So we want to bring some information. We want to bring some ideas about a path forward. So let's just dig in right away. Rich, I'm curious, you're sort of the guy we all go to internally to better understand any events that we read or come across from client conversations. Was there anything related to Slice in particular that we could identify in our Clean ID data, which of course, Clean ID being our fraud prevention technology? I'd love for you to share what we found, if anything, from that review.
Absolutely. So, some of the first things that I noticed was sort of a 4x on the block rate. So, normal block rate times 4. We were seeing upwards of 40% in the block rate. That is a number that normally causes us to pause any traffic that we have, mainly because of if it's blocking that much traffic up front, there's usually something a bit more nefarious than just survey participants in that situation. What I also found in the mix with this is some really serious signatures of sophisticated fraud. I'll get into that a little bit more. But overall, when I look at this data set, normally an escalation takes a few minutes for me to find my bearings in terms of where it's coming from. Not here. This data was very evident in terms of what it was showing and how we would have absolutely just blocked them outright as a provider.
Yeah, I think that's important. I should clarify that for those who are our clients, you likely already know this, but for anyone else who's just learning about us for the first time here, so we have two types of business business lines. We have the services line where we kind of come in and act as the field department for market research companies that want a hands-on tech and service solution for themselves. In that services business, we have never used Slice. And one of the ways that we contribute to vetting vendors is by looking at our industry-wide quality benchmarking database that we've had for 10 years. That includes ecosystem-wide fraud prevention data from our second line of business, which is we have a lot of market research firms that use our technology in a variety of ways that produces data that helps us understand the overall health of the industry. So all this data is coming from not Opinion Route services projects, but from projects in the broader ecosystem. So it's got a nice cross section of types of projects that are typically sold in the industry. So on that topic, Danielle, I'll shift to you. Before Opinion Route, even as part of Opinion Route, you've had a long career on managing vendor relationships in the global landscape, and even coming up with a variety of vetting and onboarding mechanisms. One of the common questions we are getting asked the last few days is, how can I do things differently on vetting vendors up front? I think there's a frustration that we'll talk about, I think, later, but just like, well, they sounded great. How was I going to know this before I had to be experiencing this fraud on a live project? So just curious, your thoughts, your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying you should do the bare basics to start, right? Look at their marketing materials, their website, the industry affiliations, but that alone is never enough. Recent news clearly points that out. We have an internal saying here at Opinion Route: trust but verify, right? So when you're thinking about bringing someone else in, it has to ultimately come down to leveraging technology. You have to make data-driven decisions. What do clicks look like? What Rich was just mentioning, having a tool on the front end and throughout the life cycle of the survey really is ultimately what it comes down to. A website could spew whatever you want to read on it, even referrals, right? That's hit or miss sometimes as well. I always recommend picking up the phone and calling some clients of this potential vendor. But ultimately, the data, the clicks, what is the block rate coming in? And ultimately, what does the data acceptance rate look like going out? Having those pieces of data to actually put the storyline together is the key component on making smart decisions.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a good point. I think that does require, your point about it being a tech world, I think is a great one.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we have to embrace is that the sample business is highly, highly automated in a way that has introduced new language, that has introduced new methods of recruitment, new ways of sourcing. It's become more of a supply chain over the last decade or more, right? And I think I'll just jump to the next question, which is a sort of an underlying theme that we see in a lot of places right now. But so what does this mean for the whole sample industry, right? The whole sample landscape. And because of that uncertainty, that tech separation, I think, that exists between sample companies and research firms, it's very easy to hear news like this, as unsettling and shocking and scary as it can be, and then sort of project that farther than you should.
Yeah.
From my standpoint, this doesn't say anything about the sample business overall. I want to separate two concepts here, right? So there's a concept of fraud in the broader survey ecosystem, which is one construct that we've been fighting for years, right? And then the other is that there is an actual sample provider who is perpetrating this stuff knowingly. I don't want to conflate those two. Those are completely different situations. The reason why I want to separate them is because knowingly doing this kind of fraud is a ticking time bomb, right? There are just too many mechanisms where you're going to get caught, right? And I think we should almost view this indictment as a sign of validation of that, because we all believe if someone was really doing something that sinister, they'd eventually be caught, right? But we had never seen this like kind of indictment before until now. So I view this from the lens of like, well, that's good, right? If in fact this was going on, then they definitely were noticed and caught. So I just want to separate the concept of survey fraud, which is generally a fight we're all waging together as one industry, from the idea that there may have been a sample company that actually orchestrated this inside. So that's my take on the broader sample industry. I think I just want to give a shout out. We'll transition here real quick. I want to do a lightning round with the three of us here. There's been so much content over LinkedIn, since the announcement came out up until now. I know some vocal contributors that I really appreciated included Karina at Research Head, and you have JD, you have Jay Tai, you have Tim Wilson with some good thoughts. I know Tyler up its intro. There's others. I'm sorry if I'm not calling everyone out, but there's been some really interesting contributions to the dialogue over the last week. And what we did is sort of extract just a few key bullet points that we thought would be things that a lot of our clients or just friends would have in mind. And we just kind of want to address those one by one. So Danielle, you want to kind of get us kicked off here?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of symmetry around, whether you're an end client or a market research firm. I've been reading a lot of email threads and LinkedIn, and I think the top three that I'm seeing is, I'm a small company, I'm a three-man show or a one-woman show. How do I protect myself, right? So, going out and having conversations, call us, call others that are in this similar space, have conversations. The fact that you might have lower volume than Ipsos or Kantar, that shouldn't be a deterrent. If that has been so far, keep calling, keep reaching out to people. We are here to have a conversation. Everyone should be protected, whether that's through a technology solution or leveraging what Terence, you were mentioning earlier, finding a company that can leverage the technology on your behalf at no additional charge, right? So there are solutions out there that can protect all sizes of businesses. The next one I would say is, not only, okay, great, pre-survey, I could see what the click is like, but what else? There are a few folks out there saying, I need something that's holistic, that's in survey, that monitors behavior across from the start to the end. We have that solution, right? So those things do exist out there. So making sure that you understand the landscape, making sure that you ask questions, and even if you don't know the right questions to ask, know who to call. There are definitely conversations happening that the one-stop solution, like just looking at pre-survey, is no longer going to do what you need it to do. We've been preaching that for years. You need to absolutely have pre, in, and post survey. I know a lot of people coming out of Monday's Ignite conference in New York. I feel like that's getting more widely spread, widely resonated with the industry, which is great. So now we have to take action, right? A lot of times things like this end up causing a very out of control feeling for many people. I think we all just have to focus on a solution, move forward with action, as opposed to continue to just talk about what the problem has been or what the problem currently is. So just know that there are solutions out there. And then the last one, I think, is the integration piece. Okay, great. Now I have my 2 or 3 companies that I'm interested in having those conversations with. But I mean, I'm not a survey programmer. I'm not a survey engineer or a computer engineer. How do I know how to actually implement these solutions? Again, there are easy solutions that are out there, right? We have a platform that there is no integration needed whatsoever. You have a login, and all of the tech is done in the background. So, we're not the only ones out there. We absolutely want to be able to help clients through this, whether it's through managed services or a full tech solution that requires little to no integration whatsoever. Meeting clients where they need us to meet them is going to be crucial to take that panic feeling and move forward with swiftness to make sure that everybody feels protected, as soon as they possibly can.
Yeah, I think that's all great. One of the big things that always comes to mind is there's almost like a sense from market research companies right now that like it's burn it all down, right? They're so angry and terrified. I just want to put a broader non-industry context around a lot of things here, and the first thing is like fraud is a societal problem right now, right? This is not unique to market research. You know this, right? If you log into your online banking system or really anything you subscribe to that carries any financial data, just think of all the hoops you have to jump through: username, password, getting a text sent to your phone, right? Having a passkey from an independent app. There's so many things that exist now as a response to fraud that has penetrated every sector. So in a way, I just want to put that in context. It's a broader issue we're experiencing in society. And that doesn't mean there's these universal conclusions that have to be that everything is all bad, or there's still so much good, right? Just high quality data that's able to be collected, some tremendous vendors out there. So I'm going to transition, and Rich, maybe you can help me out with a few points here. But there's this vendor concept. I think there's a lot of blame that's trying to be cast right now, which I understand. Um, The two concepts I want to address is the sample company marketing. People were really lied to and betrayed out of that. And then there's this sense, which I think is related to that, that maybe we have a systemic lack of transparency in the sample ecosystem. Um, I'll start with you because you are the one internally, whenever we identify a vendor that's struggling, you're the one that goes and offers the help to rehab and specifically identify what problem they're having and then help coach them up to a more secure, higher quality future. Maybe you could just share like your general sentiment about how receptive vendors generally are when you hit them up.
Absolutely. Each time that I have reached out almost as a performance improvement process, letting them know, as an example, what their block rate is, what their acceptance rate is. It's met with open arms. It's met with the humbleness that is super cool to watch happen. I've seen what is normally good providers sort of creep into areas where we need to just let them know, and almost immediately we see their performance get where they need to be. Then there's the providers that are systemically sitting on an edge, and it's those providers that I work with more often, just so that they understand what they are sending to us. We work record by record sometimes, and then in many cases, what it also is just explaining the holistic understanding of what we're looking at and what we're looking for, because it is a different approach when you start looking at the data in terms of it being programmatic advertising data, programmatic advertising records. And what we found is that once they start really taking the advice in terms of the technology they need to use, which doesn't necessarily need to be ours. It needs to be something that's better than what they're using, because they are on, it's really mostly coming from the recruitment side on their side. And then from that point, being able to understand a full feedback loop. That's one of the most important things that we talk about. Now, Monday's meeting just before all this happened, I talked about that full feedback loop and how that is one of the most comprehensive ways for someone to improve their performance. And when we start to show them data and give them records, they almost immediately change the tune. We had one vendor that they were sitting at high 30s or low 30s on their block rate, and high numbers on their rejection rates as well, their low acceptance rates. Once they started using my recommendations, it was almost like month by month, they just stepped up in quality. Each month, it just became a better thing. I watched a company go from 6 months out from when we started working with them on their performance to 6 months later. They went from the bottom of our vendor list, almost getting kicked out, to being at the top of our vendor list, and then graduating into a space that now they are seen as a success story, which is, I love doing that because it basically just holistically improves the data quality for everyone else that's using them as well.
And if I could just add to what you were mentioning, Rick, for those of you who are listening to this, I know some people might feel very jaded right now and just think worst case scenario. These conversations that Rich is having with the vendors, we're not displaying all of the traits and attributes, to coach them on how to cheat the system.
No.
We are teaching them which sources of their join process are leading to the most blocks and highest reconciliation rates. So they're going to their recruitment sources and turning off the ones that are leading to the bad data, right? So we're doing this in a way that is transparent enough to give the vendors what they need to clean up their recruitment sources. For those of you who were at the Ignite conference on Monday, there was a presentation up there that was talking about transparency, and the fact that the supplier level, name any supplier, right? Typically you'd have 2, 3, 4 partners per project in some cases. it's really not those 3 or 4 partners, right? It's who are those 3 or 4 partners using. And on Monday, it went a step further. It wasn't even who are the subsources that our 3 or 4 are using, but where are those recruits coming from? So that's what we're trying to attack. And again, we've been doing this for years, even on our own sample for our own projects. We work with a lot of the same partners that I'm sure everybody else works with. But, if you're working with partner A or partner B, our traffic sources with those same partner A and partner B are much cleaner than a lot of others that go direct, because we have been doing this subsource thing for a very long time and having our own knob. So I just wanted to throw that out there and clarify.
Yeah, I love that. And that's a perfect segue right back to one of the points, which was transparency. And I get it with how deep that supply chain goes that we have reached really far into to try and clean up downstream, right? Like this is an area where there's definitely a gap in understanding between the researchers. So a common theme is like, well, we have no idea what's really happening. And one of the difficult truths that I'll share right now is, well, that is not because it's impossible, right? You may not know it, but I would argue in my 25-year career in the sample world, it has never been easier right now to like reach in and understand exactly how the sausage is made. There is so much technology, and I'm not even talking about even ours, right? In the Navigator and Clean ID, I'm going just broader in the online ecosystem. There is so much technology that you can literally identify the map of where all the sources are coming from. And we do it for free. If people are curious, like we will literally do it for free. And that is the first thing we do before we have a vetting conversation with any vendor. So to me, it comes back to the marketing. Like, are the sample suppliers ever going to be really transparent about exactly where their campaigns are driving traffic from? No. And ad agencies don't do that either, right? It's not like they're about delivering on the project. It's about performance, right? And that's the world we live in. But if you're a researcher who's wondering, like, well, I want to know how this vendor's getting stuff done, we can tell you that, right? For free, right? So it's not even a very expensive endeavor. And as far as the marketing goes, I think there's a degree, and this goes beyond research, but there is a degree of, buyer beware, right? I think that's in any industry, whether you're buying a car, whether you're buying a house. So what you need to do is create a process where you are securing your dollars in a more effective way, right? So even if something goes wrong, you're ahead of it. And I think that is such a big point to make. So I don't know if it's fair really to say to the sample companies, well, you got to stop marketing in a certain way and tell us what we want to hear from inside baseball. I don't think that's realistic. But what is possible is strategic partnerships, right? That can get you insights and knowledge that you may not have had on your own. And really, just because it's a high tech, like Danielle said, and a very complicated supply chain, like Rich, you explore all the time, it's reasonable that a small to mid-sized market research agency would need a little support, right? Would need a little expertise from the outside, just to provide the best possible product. So, yeah, I think that those are like some of the big takes. I know the conversation will absolutely continue. Definitely for our part, we want to be more solution oriented. We want to be part of sort of regrounding the industry and getting everyone a lot more comfortable with their strategy. We are definitely open. I mean, I know all of us have been on the phone, not email, but on the phone a lot this week, till late at night in some cases as well. We're here for you. It's not something you have to navigate alone. But I'll kind of finish up with how I started that. This is, in one sense, if you separate just the fraud from this, at least allegedly being a inside job, so to speak, I do firmly believe in my heart of hearts that we don't have to worry about the integrity of, the lion's share of suppliers in that way. but it is a bit of an awakening moment around the issue of data quality and how processes need to be upgraded on a day-to-day basis. But again, as always, we're here for it. And Rich, Danielle, thanks so much for jumping on with very little notice.
Happy to
Thank you.
help.